Yes, sir. Welcome back to another Trap or Die film session. I am your host of the Trap or Die podcast, Mual, Jamal Forrest. And listen, man, we are here to talk about the defense on this side. If you haven't done so already, make sure you take a look at the Jaden Daniels film session, how he performed in his open debut for the Commanders. Gotta check that out. This one, even as I say this right now, I don't know how long this film session is going to be. I'm going to try and condense it and like highlight the good and bad. But I will say this off rip. I think that what we saw, I would say like 65% of the issues that I saw in the film session or in the film study is actually correctable. I don't think all of this is like, I would say 75%. I don't think this is like a huge detriment as the season moves along. I'm willing to give the coaches, as we wait, and because this season is fresh, this coaching staff is fresh, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and see if they can correct these issues early on and see if this defense can improve upon those miscommunication errors and the technical errors. So here we go. Without further ado, let's get into the film session. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's go. All right, so as I stated briefly before we got into this, I'm going to highlight good and bad. I'll kind of sort it by defensive line or front seven and then secondary. And then we'll get into the issues that I saw. So not all bad from everybody. Quan Martin had some good reps. I think the first one is one of the bigger plays of the game early on is the way that Tampa Bay successfully got everything situated at this front line, right? But Quan Martin negated a big play. They ran a pin pull concept, right? The pre-snap motion that you're going to see essentially shifts the defensive alignment inside and it allows the tight end, 87, and then Christian Wirtz, your left tackle, to get an advantage towards the perimeter, right? So now you're able to suck in the one cornerback that's on the outside, which 87 is able to take care of. Then you get 78 creating the alley. All White has to do is hit that alley, and it's a one-on-one opportunity for him. And if he makes Quan Martin miss, that's a big play. So in that moment, excellent play from Quan. 2nd and 5 ends up being a 3rd and 3. Just a 2-yard gain. Very clutch play for Quan. All right, so you all know how I felt about Jon and Duran's performance against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It wasn't super impressive, from my opinion, honestly. And I also think, you would love to see more effort from Jon Allen in particular, especially when he like whiffs on a play or misses. Like you would like to see him try and work himself back into a play. But here you are with Jon. If you look in terms of his alignment, he's the front side 2 tech. So he lines up over top of 68, the left guard, right? And the way they run their zone concept, they essentially have Wirtz, who's actually doing a front side reach, but Cleveland Farrell gets inside of him, so now he just seals him. But now you have Jon Allen being able to work and defeat the front side reach really and just ends up setting the edge by himself. That's an excellent rep by Jon Allen. Ends up setting the edge by himself, just outruns Rachaad White and leaves Bobby Wagner to clean up. And I think you get a 2-yard loss on the play because Jon Allen was able to eliminate the edge for White to run to. All right, the very next play was the near interception from Ben St-Juste. And what I like about this is the alignment up front that Ben is playing with. Good leverage and giving Palmer's alignment, right? This is 2nd and 11. Good leverage and playing along the boundary, right? But also knowing if this is an outbreaking route, right, he can just jump on that. The good thing right here is like the cushion wasn't ate up quickly, and the way that Palmer broke his route, it made things easier for Ben. So just being able to react as quickly as he did was probably one of his best reps of the day. You'll see in some negatives how he froze in some instances, but having that alignment the way Palmer had it, and then Ben reading everything perfectly and making a break as soon as he breaks, that was an elite rep. I'm sorry, it wasn't elite because you ain't make the tackle. You ain't make the pick. But up front, you see also Frankie Louvu, number 4. He trips, but you see him being able to win quickly against the guard. He just has to maintain his feet, maintain his balance. But 2 good instances of a pass rusher winning, but also on the back end, Ben St-Juste coming through for your secondary. He just has to get that turnover. So here is Jamin Davis early in the game. I think Jamin only had 13 snaps on the day, but at the same time, he had a couple of really good reps in the run game specifically, right? This first one was very impressive. It shows off his competitiveness. He didn't allow himself to get taken out the play. So we'll see him on the right side in between the right guard and the right tackle. He's the 3 technique, right? Very good rep from Jamin. He loses the combo block badly, gets sent to the moon. But the good thing that he does is that he holds on to Cody Moss. You can actually see it right here where I pause it. He holds on to Cody Moss jersey, which allows him to reestablish himself, like reestablish his balance, and flings himself back into the play. Now, pay attention, because without this tackle from Jamin, you're looking at, this is a 1st and 10 inside the 25-yard line. You're looking at least a 15 to 20-yard gain if Jamin isn't able to make this play. So huge play from Jamin in this moment, competing and working himself back into the play after being taken out by the combo block. A really good block, honestly. Jamin just made a play. Now you have a situation where Jamin is on your left side, right? He's over top of the tight end. He's a 6 technique, and he's head up on the tight end, slightly outside of Christian Wirfs. Now you're getting a 4-yard TFL from Jamin in this moment because of his lateral quickness, right? His ability to win quickly from going left to right or right to left, right? But he's able to get inside of Christian Wirfs quickly, penetrate the backfield with that quickness. And he forces a 2nd and 14. Unfortunately, the next play, things don't go too well for Washington. But with that being said, let's kind of get into some of the problems that you see. You saw some instances of good coverage. Honestly, there was even more that I would love to show, but I also think that, we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get there. I think the bigger point of this story against the Buccaneers was the way that Baker played, the way that the secondary had issues with communication. Even up front, abandoning their gaps was a problem. So let's tap into that. Okay, so I'm sure I got some of this right. I may be missing a piece or two there, but from my takeaways when Washington saw Tampa Bay in trips alignments or bunches alignments, they ended up running like a zone match or man match coverage on the back end, right? So this is the 12th play of the game. This is early on. You saw some instances later on in the game as well, but typically in a trips alignment or a bunches alignment, the cornerbacks and the safety would end up taking one of the receivers depending on which way their stem begins, right? And in this moment, we're looking at Quan Martin, right? He's the safety. He's one of your post safeties. He's over top of Mike Evans for reference. And then you have Emmanuel Forbes at the top of your screen. And then in the slot, I believe that is Mikey Sanders still, right? So up front, you see that's 20-something yard gain. But the way that this is gone, Mike Evans is running a stem or a corner, but he starts his with an inside release. So for whatever reason, Quan takes this and bites way too hard, right? And now he's flat-footed on his heels, and Mike Evans is breaking back outside. Now, if you all are wondering what just happened right here, just in case y'all were wondering, it may look like Quan Martin is pointing, but he's not pointing. That's not his hand pointing at anybody else except for like his arm is up for a balance standpoint. You'll see it in the end zone angle. As he breaks out, that's where the separation is. Quan Martin just gets lost in coverage, in my opinion. But you'll see it here, and you'll see his arm. Oh, you can't see his arm, but he's not pointing. And hopefully you take my word for that. But anyway, you just see like how hard he bites down with that inside stem, and now he's breaking back out, or his inside release, now he's breaking back out. But those are one of the moments where it's not just a miscommunication thing. It's more so from an aggressive standpoint, like what exactly was he looking at, but also about his eyes, like where was his eyes at? And that's part of the problem as well. Okay, so the next sequence of plays is the second quarter. I also think this is important because this is where I think Forbes is in the beginning stages of being benched for the game for Noah Igbenogany. So let's go ahead and get into one of the very first plays that I think starts the actual problem here, okay? All right, so as I mentioned, I thought the second quarter played out very interestingly for Forbes. This is starting with a 2nd and 14. This is play, I want to believe like 23. So early second quarter, probably like 11, 12 minutes left in the quarter. And you'll see this instance where they're running a cover 2, right? They're running a high-low concept, the Bucs are. You have a curl and you have a corner essentially on both ends, right? And I want you all to take into consideration how each cornerback is playing this, right? Not the slot guys, but how each cornerback is playing this from the field side where Forbes is at the bottom of your screen to the boundary side where I think that is Ben St-Juste, right? So see how the integrity is. I can't remember the specific word right now, how they kind of determine this, but how he's leveling out both the high-low concept at the top of your screen. He's able to have vision on both concepts, but he's playing both of them honestly, right? And then you look at the bottom of your screen with Forbes and how he's unable to stay in between, like have that good distance between that high-low concept of the corner and the curl. He's biting down way too hard on that curl route, but he also doesn't have enough depth. He didn't sink enough on the corner route, right? So he doesn't help his safety out at all, but he also doesn't help himself out because, especially in a 2nd and 14 situation where you know you can risk giving up a 5-yard completion and it's 3rd and 9. So now you're talking about a 2nd and 14 goes for 19 yards and a 1st down completion, right after you get the Jamin Davis penetration on Tristan Wirfs for a 4-yard TFL. Hurts. And keep that in mind, right? Keep that in mind because we're going to go back to a moment where Forbes was taken out of the game and they run an exact same concept. But in between that, you get a 3rd down and you get a 3rd down and 3, right? The Buccaneers, I don't know why I lost their name for a minute, motions Chris Godwin across the formation. Now you're in a 2-by-2 situation and Washington is running man coverage. Now, granted, that's a dot from Baker Mayfield. Very good ball placement, accuracy against man coverage. But now you're talking about being out physical at the top of your route. But also, I don't know exactly what it is with his feet. But it's hard for me to even explain. Like, I'm not a DB coach. I'm not a person with a trained eye for, like, specific technical problems with defensive backs. I'll be honest. Like, I'm not here to bullshit nobody. But something just looks slow in that instance with Forbes. Anyway, the point being here is just how physical Chris Godwin was at the top of his route, and Forbes wasn't able to match that on a 3rd down. They targeted him. But in between those 2 plays that I just showed you, there was moments where I think Forbes specifically was in a situation where he was faced on 2 3rd downs, 2 consecutive 3rd downs. That was just one of them. That was the second one. And Forbes lost both reps on 3rd down, and he could have played it much better. The first one, he gave up too much cushion. It was a 3rd and short that they converted for a 1st down, and Forbes gives up probably about 6 or 7 yards before he's even able to close the space. So he played some poor technique in both 3rd down situations. We showed the 2nd and 14 situation where he could have played that high-low concept much better than what he did. And now we have a situation after that 3rd down that we just showed where Forbes is taken out of the game. And then you get something like this where, remember, high-low concept. You have Noah Igbenogany in the game now. Ben St-Juste is at the bottom of your screen. He's at the boundary. On the field side, the top of your screen, Noah Igbenogany, he's at the top of your screen. Cover 2, they're running it inverted now. So your safety in the middle of the field, he's coming down. Now let's run that back. They did get a 7-yard completion out of this, but we're looking at the coverage. Now, I hope you all saw, I'll do it one more time. I hope you all saw how Ben St-Juste at the bottom of your screen maintained both routes, right? In his vision, right? He has the high corner, and then he still has the curl in his vision. Same thing with Igbenogany at the top of your screen. He has vision on the high route, and he has vision on the low route. Now, granted, he ran a whip route, the receiver did, but that's not his problem. That should be his teammates' problem inside. I think that's Michael Walker. I can't tell. Can't see who it is. That might be a defensive lineman. But either way, the pressure gets in front of Baker Mayfield anyway, and he's not even able to see the whip route. Oh, that's number 6. That's Dante Fowler, I believe. But you see where I'm going in terms of the issue that I thought popped up. I think is interesting. I don't know what that means for Emmanuel Forbes moving forward, but that's what happened. He ended up playing a couple more plays, few more drives, up until the point where he had the PI, and then he was taken out of the game for Noah Igbenogany. All right, so one last thing that I want to show in terms of the miscommunication thing, right? And the reason why the trips thing may be an issue moving forward. Let me rephrase it, or I think this should be corrected and could be corrected in terms of how they play things in the trips formation. This was a busted coverage to McMillan on the touchdown. And keep in mind what I said in terms of that man match thing. This one was one instance, right, where you see McMillan 15 motions from the wide out to the slot. And now we're like, who do we get? We're talking about Quan Martin and we're talking about Mike St-Juste, right? So Quan comes down. He's supposed to have one of those guys. So is Mikey St-Juste. He's supposed to have one of those guys. Now, again, remember, depending on their rules, I don't know what their coverage rules are specifically, but depending on their rules, and we'll probably get to learn it as the season goes on. One of them was supposed to have the vertical, and one of them was supposed to stay on 88. But neither one of them takes neither one of them. And you get a score. And last one on the miscommunication side, you'll see a stacked alignment here at the bottom of your screen. And in this cover 3, you have a third level defender blitzing in Mikey St-Juste. Now, granted, this was an incompletion, right? Mind you, you're paying attention to number 1, who had solid coverage, Noah Igbenoghy, at the top of your screen. But we're looking at Ben St-Juste, right? And we're talking about coverage rules, right? Look at his feet. I think that was a nervousness because he wasn't sure which one he was supposed to take. I might be wrong, but I think that's what that was. And Mike Evans blew right past him. But again, this is one of those things they have to understand what their rules are. We know that if we know Mike St-Juste was blitzing and you have support in terms of Ben St-Juste has support and Quan Martin coming down to help him, Ben should know who he's responsible for. It didn't look like Ben knew. Quan knew who he was supposed to take. And Quan may have been wrong. I don't know. But in that moment, I think we saw more evidently who was unsure at the very least of who was supposed to get who. And thankfully, it wasn't a big play on Washington's side. All right, let's finish up this film session with another theme here for Washington, and this is preparedness from the Tampa Bay side, but also just missed opportunities from Washington, right? This first play you're looking at is a 2nd and 10. I think it was a coordinator battle, man. I don't think Joe Witt had the upper hand here at all in this game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They was prepared for him. They was prepared for a lot of things, right? This is a moment where Washington decided to send a blitz to the 3x2 side, right? The 2 receivers and the 1 running back on the left of Baker Mayfield. And they send Mike St-Juste in the blitz. Tampa does a good job beating that blitz, throwing to that way. Now, granted, this was a flag on the play, but now you have a 3x1 or 3-on-1 situation, really a 4-on-1 situation with that third lineman trailing behind Bobby Wagner, but you have a 3-on-1 situation throwing to the blitz side. And you get something like that. There was moments like this throughout the game where a coordinator was just prepared for whatever Joe Witt sent his way. Another instance of missed opportunities are the sacks, man. Jon Allen, Deron Payne both having opportunities to make plays in the backfield, and they aren't able to close on Baker. Now, granted, Baker isn't necessarily an elite athlete, but he's also elusive in the pocket. But they know that, and they're getting paid top 3 money to make plays like this. You can't just start off well and not be able to finish, right? And this happened a couple times throughout the day, and that's just kind of frustrating from a fan perspective. But I'm sure it's frustrating from them personally and from their coaches, where you see instances where they're actually winning, but they aren't able to close. Like this 3rd down and 6 went for 11 yards. They end up scoring on the drive. They was already in scoring range here, but they end up scoring on the drive. You don't want to see that from your playmakers where they aren't able to finish instances like that. Now, I get it if it happens once or twice, but to have it happen as many times as it did collectively on the defensive line, and you walk away with no sacks or really 1 sack on the day, that's a problem. Another instance is Baker being Baker, man. I think he's been underrated for a good portion of his career, but definitely heading into this season, from a national standpoint, I think he definitely earned his $100 million. But this is one of those ones where, again, avoiding pressure, but able to step up, use his arm, extend the play. On a 3rd and 7, you get a 1st down. Very good instincts from Chris Godwin as well to see that his quarterback is in trouble. He just continues to carry inside. And I don't know exactly what Bobby Wagner was doing in coverage, but he let him run right underneath him. and you get a quick first down just like that. So that's gonna wrap it up for this film session. I appreciate everybody who watched. I appreciate everybody who listened, stuck it through. Defensively, I think I showed you several different angles in how this game was lost on the defensive side of the football. There were also some that I didn't show, but I mean, for obvious reasons, it's 60-something plays. I'm not gonna show you everything. Tampa had answers all day for Joe Witt and his 5-man pressures. Now, granted, it wasn't the case where everything worked out. Obviously, Washington won some. They made some plays up front, but they didn't finish. That's part of the problem. You got to be able to finish. And hopefully, like moving forward, this is a consistent thing where they are able to generate pressure, but they finish on the quarterback. He had a lot of 5-man pressures. He relied on his cornerbacks a lot to make plays and be sound in their coverage and their technique. The cornerbacks failed them sometimes. Communication-wise was also a problem. And I think that's also going to get them in trouble down the line if they can't continue to correct it. We saw how the trips messed them up. Pre-snap motion messed them up. And, coordinators, they're going to find a way to do exactly what the previous coordinator did that had success on you done. So they aren't going to be done getting tested. And I think the Giants are going to go down that same route. We saw Baker Mayfield execute at a high level as well. I mean, that's good for Baker. That's good for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But obviously for Washington, that's a headache to kind of witness and experience that it happened on them. They couldn't stop Baker. So yeah, that's kind of rough for them. And then we also saw some plays where, there is a positive light in some aspects so long as they can execute consistently. That's going to wrap it up for this film session. Hope you all enjoyed it. It is week 1. Don't be too down. Don't be too optimistic. Kind of seen the lows. You haven't seen the highs yet, but we've seen the lows and how low it could get. But there's definitely some encouraging signs throughout the film sessions on both the offense and defense. And I think as we move forward throughout the weeks, especially week 2, I can't wait to see how they bounce back, especially with this new coaching staff and this new set of players. So y'all be safe. Enjoy your day. We out of here. Peace.
Watch him throw the ball, we gon' pick it off. You gon' let him hit the hole or you gon' cut it off. You gon' play through 4th and long or you gon' punt it off. Your defenders heavy hitters, put your pads in. Don't be looking for the ref to throw no flags in. Keep the helmet on, keep the cleats tight. You the type to want to win by any means, right? You should look alive, this is Trap or Dive.